I felt like my life was just becoming so small. I was told by a lot of people that they were positive it wasn't my neck. I'll never forget this because he basically just told me, you have chronic migraine, intractable chronic migraine, and there's really nothing you can do about it. And essentially told me to go home and just live with it. The pain, the fatigue, the brain fog, I couldn't even sit in a spot for like more than like 5 minutes. I really felt like I was almost in a little box in my mind because I only had so much capacity. When a flare would happen, it could last for weeks. Horrible brain fog, horrible fatigue. I'm a big proponent of the natural C curve in the neck. My body just couldn't handle it. There was almost nothing I could do to make it go away. They were ruining my life. How am I going to get through this? I was just constantly on a mission to figure it out, what was going on. I went to neurologists, I went to upper cervical chiropractors, I went to traditional chiropractors, I went to holistic medicine doctors, I went to a lot more than that even. I finally saw your video on YouTube and I thought, that's where I want to go to figure this out. And sure enough, we figured it out. The fact of being able to bounce back out of those has been monumental.
On your own, yeah.
Had really good energy. Luckily, that whole time I've been doing a lot more of my hobbies. I kind of just kept pushing. Ended up getting to you, which has been a blessing and it's helped me a lot. The past 2 or 3 months, it kind of feels like my mind and my life just kind of opened back up. Thank you for getting me to where I'm at now. You're the only person that's been able to do that. After our treatment, improvements started to happen week after week. I'm feeling a lot more like the person that I'm meant to be. Thank you, Dr. Brian.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
All right, good.
Hi, I'm Dr. Brian Hutchison, and Austin has traveled from San Diego to be here today. And Austin, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Austin, you and I worked together for 1 week back maybe about couple months ago, and now you've come back. And tell me a little bit about what first led you to come here, maybe even the journey, your health journey over the last several years.
Had a lot of pain, after I had an accident when I was younger, and I kind of had a lot of pain since that accident, but really the last probably 4 or 5 years, the pain got really bad in my neck, and headaches were the primary concern that were just debilitating. Daily, constant, no reprieve from them whatsoever. They were ruining my life. And I was just constantly on a mission to figure it out, what was going on. I went to neurologists, I went to upper cervical chiropractors, I went to traditional chiropractors, I went to holistic medicine doctors, I went to a lot more than that even. Some things helped, some things didn't. I did physical therapy, and I just sort of innately knew we weren't getting to the root cause of what was going on. And I kind of ended up doing a lot of digging and research on my own during this process, and because I knew, I had a neck injury when I was younger, and sort of saw this upper cervical instability issue that maybe I thought I could have had, or at least had some issue there. So went to a lot of people that told me I didn't have that, for sure. And I just kind of kept pushing because I never really got to the issue, and I finally saw your video on YouTube and I thought, that's where I want to go to figure this out. And then sure enough, we figured it out.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about how during this journey where your headaches and diagnosed with migraines and told by some people that there was nothing you could do, you just had to deal with it and just kind of suck it up, and that this was how your life was going to be. And even being told by a couple of people that your curve didn't matter, that you were in alignment, so there was no chance that it could be coming from your neck. And just how that, not only because the symptoms were worsening anyway, but how also being told you'd have to live with this forever, being told it wasn't coming from your neck, going to get internal scans done, MRIs and different kinds of, did you have a brain scan done too?
Several. Yeah, we did a couple of different MRIs, and then a naturopath doctor did some scans as well, or sent me to get scans.
You have blood work done.
Oh man, we actually thought for a while possibly it was mold toxicity, so I didn't even talk about that. I went down that whole path, the mold. I had my house checked. I've done a lot of stuff.
But also the symptoms were not just headaches and the pain. I mean, they spiraled. And
Mm-hmm.
tell us a little bit about some of the other things that you were experiencing that you shared with me yesterday when we were talking.
Yeah, so I guess to hit on what we were just talking about was, I was told by a lot of people that they were positive it wasn't my neck, and these were, upper cervical chiropractic, doctors were telling me it's not coming from your neck. My neurologist, I'll never forget this, because he basically just told me you have chronic migraine, intractable chronic migraine, and there's really nothing you can do about it. There's no solution, and essentially told me to go home and just live with it. So that actually put me into a pretty deep depression during that time, and then I just didn't know which direction to go anymore. I was using all my resources, my time, my money. I mean, it was really brutal. My mom and my fiance dealt a lot with just my emotions, and it was very hard to deal with. But I kind of just kept pushing. I ended up getting to you, which has been a blessing, to say the least, and it's helped me a lot.
So yeah, you had a terrible time being discouraged, not being able to find answers, being told that this was going to be the rest of your life. You're still relatively, you're still relatively young. You got a lot of life ahead of you.
Yeah.
And I think an interesting part was that the symptoms that were starting to come about as you went on. Not only did you go through that depression because you weren't able to get better, but some of the other almost feeling, the way that you described it to me was pretty good about how it was like the focus was here and you couldn't, experience and just make it through the day. Just tell us a little more on the different symptoms that you were having for a while now.
I'm not joking, daily for years, and some days it was better than others, or whatever, but I felt like my life was just becoming so small. And I mean that in so many different ways, because I was cutting things out of my life because I didn't have the energy or the focus to be able to do them, and I really felt like I was almost in a little box in my mind, because I only had so much capacity to even focus, and I really just kind of dedicated that time to work. And I still lived my life. I still did my hobbies. I pushed through them. I was in miserable pain. I never really let it totally wreck me, but it was very miserable every single day. So after our treatment, slowly, it wasn't like a light switch and oh my god, I'm better. It was just slowly improvements started to happen week after week. And as we talked about yesterday, the past 2 or 3 months, it kind of feels like my mind and my life just kind of opened back up. And I feel like the best way I can put it is I'm feeling a lot more like the person that I'm meant to be. So
and your general sense of headaches or migraines in the last couple of months has been, how much you say?
Significant. So, on average, I would say 50 to 70%. It varies.
Yeah, sure.
But on average, over 50%.
We did
on
one week together.
Yeah.
What did we find? We found that you had, I think it was 4 millimeters of instability on one side, maybe it was 3 on the other. You had disc bulges at almost every level in your neck. I mean, I think that MRI report, it was like C2 to T1, it was just disc bulge, even a couple spots where the spinal canal space was narrowed. And they said potentially you might have some kind of a symptom from this. The radiologist commented on that. It was interesting. So you did have a lot of small injuries and even borderline significant to moderate C1, C2 instability. One of the big things that I think is interesting is that you didn't have headaches growing up. Like you didn't have chronic headaches growing up.
Not at all.
So while still, if you've had them your whole life, there could be a structural origin, it's much more common that the people that have the actual migraines that are congenital, that they may have to in some way manage throughout life, that they've had them most of their life. If you really trace back, when I talked to a couple of top neurologists that I've been able to be surrounded by, that was one of the things that they brought up to me. And Austin's having begun much later in life, you have to look like what changed, and was it a slow chronic overuse that causes tendinopathy and a little bit of ligament laxity and abnormal curvature and then disc bulges from abnormal forces that can start to slowly change. And Austin's history, your history was that this did get worse over time. It wasn't like it was just one day and then it was the same constant kind of symptom the rest of the time. And even though there may have been pivotal points when all of a sudden it really started getting worse, it's interesting to think that. And so you've been doing your weights, you've been just nonstop doing the weights over the last several months, and it's kind of gotten to the point where you might not even need to use them as often anymore. I mean, we fine-tuned it, but...
Yeah, I've been doing the weights. I am, despite what a lot of people think and have told me, I'm a big proponent of the natural C curve in the neck, like we talked about forever. You know, just trying to figure out, like, so, you know, I believe in the natural anatomy of the body, the natural C curve, and so I've been wearing my weights, like, you know, like you told me to. I've been, you know, try not to not like hanging my head down a lot.
Yeah.
You know, making sure my desk is super ergonomical, like that stuff all has made a huge difference as well. And just little things along the way that I've learned myself also have made a difference to help me sort of continue to progress.
Yeah. And so, you know, fast forward to now, you mentioned that, you know, you feel like you've gotten your life back. We worked together for 1 week. You're back here to do some fine tuning because throughout that last couple of months, even though it was a steady upward trend, there was 1 or 2 times where you felt almost like, was it going to rebound?
Yes, there was, yeah.
Interesting enough, though, you know, tell us about that, but also how your body was able to come out of it, you know, just given the homework that you have with the curve, the initial stimulation of various tendons and work, you know, adjustments, everything that we've done, but how that's been for you that, you know, you were able to get out of those flares on your own.
Yeah, so typically, like, when a flare would happen, it could last for weeks and weeks and weeks before it would let down at all. It would just be a daily, constant, the same, just dull, achy pain throughout, you know, my upper region, mainly in my head and my neck. And there was almost nothing I could do to make it go away.
Yeah.
Now, I guess the best way I can describe it is it feels like my body doesn't want to stay stuck there anymore. It wants to almost go back to like homeostasis, whatever. It wants to live in more of a natural, like, happy state rather than that, like, you know, tight, dark, like
spot,
depressed state. Yeah. So but yeah, it you know, that's been one of the biggest points, is because I have had low points. It's not like I've just been perfect. Yeah. So the fact of being able to bounce back out of those has been monumental.
On your own, yeah. And I think another cool point to bring up is that while I know amazing doctors that will treat with regenerative therapies the spinal discs, the, you know, deeper ligaments, surgeons that sometimes will save people's lives. I mean, my brother's life was saved by neurosurgery. And it's interesting because if you, basically the philosophy of what I do, being a much more conservative type of a care model, is if you can maximize and improve the alignment, which has to do with spinal manipulation and just positioning in space, the curvature, and then the stability through things such as tendon and superficial ligament dry needling, that very often you can get somebody to return to expressing health by balancing the forces on each of the joints, through creating proper curvature, through normal tugging disappearing, from getting stability. So every time you step, Austin, that one side of your shoulder doesn't drop down and pull your neck back out into a position where you're compromising nerve integrity and also blood flow, where just you can get in that sensation. I think we talked a little bit about this yesterday, where it's almost like that nervous system overdrive is like immediately lifted.
Yeah.
Where you feel like all of a sudden, you know, what about your other symptoms? You mentioned you had fatigue. Didn't you have tinnitus at one point? Didn't you have, you know, some of these other things, you know, just that energy level?
That was, that's the biggest part of the other part, not just the headache itself. The fatigue that came along with it was unrelenting. I mean, I would sleep, you know, 8 hours. Luckily, I slept decent with this issue for the most part, but I would have just horrible brain fog, horrible fatigue. Like, I would be, you know, rolling into work, getting ready to do my day, and it was just like, how am I gonna get through this?
Yeah.
Like, how am I gonna? And yeah, the brain fog was probably the second worst symptom. And so the pain, the fatigue, the brain fog, I mean, I couldn't even sit in a spot for like more than like 5 minutes, it would seem like.
Feeling restless or uncomfortable.
Yeah, I mean, you can, many of my friends, then maybe they'll see this video and they'll maybe even laugh, because I would have to go and lay down like constantly
while you're hanging out with them.
while I'm hanging out with them, or while I'm, you know, out doing my hobby. Like I fish a lot, so I'd be on the water and I'd just lay down on the deck of the boat.
Yeah.
Just like my body just couldn't handle it.
Wow. And so now you just recently took a fishing trip with a bunch of your friends.
Yeah.
And it was a long one too. It
Yeah.
was like over a week.
Yeah, that was we didn't fish on that trip, but yeah, that was a boat trip to the Bahamas that we took, and that was amazing. Had really good energy. Luckily, that whole time I've been doing a lot more of my hobbies, such as fishing, golfing, those things that I, you know, sort of took a back seat. And I definitely didn't get to do them as much as I wanted to. And when I was doing them, I wasn't feeling well at all.
Yeah.
So.
No, that's great. And so now moving forward, you know, we still have a little bit of time left in our second round of sessions together.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we talked a little bit about how, you know, one of your ankles was moving a certain way. And every time you step that, you know, it's maybe going to contribute over time to a recurrence of something with the neck. Because if people's ankles or hips are in a way not functioning optimally,
Mm-hmm.
that it can cause their gait to be off in such a way that you can end up affecting your neck over 6 months, a year, 2 or 5 years. The average person, Austin, takes 1 million steps a year. So can you imagine if you just are off a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
what that can do 1 million times? And an athlete takes 2
Yeah.
million steps a year. And this is just average, right? But
Right.
I mean, that's a lot of steps to have
Yeah.
a gait that's off.
Yeah.
So fast forward, you know, as you travel back home, hopefully you'll be up
Mhm.
to that 70, 85% better after this week.
Yeah.
It's been a successful week so far.
Yeah.
And we have a plan for you. We have a plan that, you know, you always can return maybe in a couple months. We can fine tune it a little more. We've connected you with a local, and you're in Southern California, you live in San Diego.
Yep.
So we've connected you with a local, amazing regenerative medicine doctor,
Yep.
knowing that you do have these disc bulges, you do have the ligament laxity in some of the areas, but you're back to living a great life. You're functioning.
Yeah.
You're doing everything you love, and if you want to fine tune or kind of polish up some of those still remaining potential vulnerabilities, you know, we've got you connected with the right people.
Yeah.
And is there anything else that you know, you'd like to kind of share with?
Yeah, I mean, you know, first of all, just getting to you, and then us talking, and then you know, us doing the x-ray and sort of you confirming what I've always thought something was wrong. And that was a huge relief in the sense, because I felt sort of validated from, you know, just being told that nothing was wrong with my neck for a really long time. So
Yeah.
that, you know, that was great, and I want to thank you for getting me to where I'm at now. I mean, you're the only person that's been able to do that, and so I'm really looking forward to continuing to work with you and to feel better. But what I would say to other people, I would say that you need to be an advocate for your own health, and you need to sort of take matters into your own hands. I mean, our regular Western medicine model is not capable, in my opinion, of, you know, dealing with these chronic issues, things that can slip under the radar. And I think that it's important to seek other professionals in order to help yourself. And if you think something's off, it probably is, and you should definitely go with your gut and don't stop fighting to feel better.
Yeah, that's great, Austin. And I think that the important part is that we're really starting to appreciate collectively as a, you know, humankind, just how important our structure is in affecting our function. And I think that more than ever, we're starting to see that changes in your structure, whether it's alignment, curvature, or stability, or chronic overuse and causing a hypersympathetic state where your body just can't get out of that fight or flight. And it can start to, I believe, through almost like a paracrine type cellular signaling response, affect neighboring tissue. If you have an area that's been under chronic stress for so long, and there's tendinopathy in that area, and there's nerve ingrowth that are sympathetic nerves, and they can produce different kinds of catecholamines and dopamine that can be produced in degenerated tendon, and abnormal curvature that's interfering with nerves and blocking blood flow, that this can end up causing system-wide problems. And of course, we always still recommend somebody get cleared by a primary care doctor, by a specialist, to make sure there's nothing that could be trumping trying to improve the posture, or trying to improve the curvature, or trying to bring stability. You know, sometimes people do have a lesion in the brain, or sometimes people do have some very, beginning onset of a vertebral artery intimal, tear that they need to get emergency surgery for. So in no way should you, discount, sticking with your primary care doctor. But if you're, like Austin said, on this chronic journey and you're not getting answers, you really need to explore how much that structure can be affecting your function. Thank you so much, Austin.
Thank you, Dr. Brian.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
All right, good.